Yeah, so welcome and thank you everyone for joining us. Just so people are aware, we're going to be recording this session for anyone who can't make it and to be able to share notes with people afterwards. This session will run for about an hour and a half, about half an hour for the presentation, and then we'd love to open it up for discussion and questions. Please feel free to add questions in the chat while we're talking. We're packing a lot of information into the session, so we ask people to either hold their questions or feel free to put them in the chat, and we'll try to get to them, but might not be able to while we're presenting. If people are interested in more information, please do feel free to go to our website, regeneratecascadia.org.
So most of you know who I am, Clare Attwell. I'm a community artist and weaver based in Victoria, BC, and it's in the heart of the Salish Sea. It's also on the unceded lands of the Lekwungen and Wasanic-speaking Coast Salish people.
Yeah, and I'm Brandon Letsinger. I live in Seattle on the unceded lands of the Duwamish and Coast Salish people, and I'm the founder of Cascadia Now in the Department of Bioregion.
So while we're the primary conveners for Regenerate Cascadia, we're by no means the only ones. Many others, including Ben Cadell, Mitty, who's here, Stephen Morris, Quinn Gerald, and Sherry Hendon have joined us as part of our core bioregional scaffolding team. We need to acknowledge the dozens of other local leaders, land leaders, who are active in each area, coming together to make this tour and summit happen. And I also really want to acknowledge the role of Earth Regenerators and the bioregional catalysts in me having even got to this point and where we're at right now. And so without the many conversations, mapping sessions, story of place explorations, discussions around the role of community art and ritual, and campfires and bioregional learning and exploring all around, it's hard to imagine seeing all of this from at least from my perspective coming together.
Yeah, and if you're not familiar with myself or my work, so I work with an organization called the Cascadia Department of Bioregion. We are a social movement and 501c3 nonprofit dedicated to growing the Cascadia movement and helping grow a planetary network of interconnected bioregions and bioregional movements. We take our inspiration from Danella Meadows, author of The Limits of Growth and founder of the Belaton Group, who in 1982 envisioned a series of centers and departments where information and models about resources and the environment could be housed, and in her words, would contain people with excellent mind and tools, but not walled off as scientific centers so often are, either from the lives of ordinary people or from the realities of political processes. The people in these centers would be at home with farmers, miners, planners, and the heads of state, and they would able to both listen to and talk to all of them. There would need to be many of these centers all over the world, each one responsible for a discrete bioregion. We believe in the model of subsidiarity and have invited and taken on the role of invitee that has invited Joe Brewer and the Design School for Regenerating Earth to join us here in October, and envisioning as Regenerate Cascadia as a long-term program to connect local organizers into a broader bioregional framework, and to see the work of local landscape leaders supported through watersheds, ecoregions, and bioregions in ways they need, as defined and connected by them themselves. If you're not familiar with Cascadia or bioregionalism, I'd like to just take a moment to introduce our home, the Cascadia bioregion. The Cascadia bioregion is defined by the watersheds of the Columbia, Snake, and Fraser rivers, and as far as the salmon swim. It stretches from Mount St. Elias in the north, down to Cape Mendocino in the south, as far east as Yellowstone. To the west, its boundaries are pulled to the Cascadia subduction zone. We use the boundaries of the Cascadia bioregion with the recognition that nature works on the scale of watersheds, ecoregions, and bioregions, and that arbitrary boundaries that are not representative of the people in place can often hamper, be divisive, or halt our efforts at creating the change that is important to our regions and that our planet needs. We want people to think of themselves as citizens of their watersheds rather than national identities as defined by arbitrary lines that don't represent the people, ecosystems, or place. For organizers of this bioregion, our home is Cascadia. We see this as a gateway, and we hope to empower every person to be active and engaged in the issues they care about, able to walk out their front door and get involved and be supported with the resources they need.
So the way we make sense of the nested layers of watersheds, ecoregions, and bioregions reveals why it makes sense to honor the integrity of decision-making at each of the different scales, while never losing sight of the fact that these are nested whole systems, where each level of decision-making is understood as part of what informs the whole. So using the principle of subsidiarity means that decision-making remains at the lowest level of complexity until it needs to move up to a higher level in order to make sense of the larger context. It totally makes sense when we look at the nested scales of landscape. But culturally, the fact that human systems give lip service to local decision-making and concentrate most of the power at the top means that we currently operate in diametric opposition to what is needed for bioregional coherence. For Regenerate Cascadia, we work from the grassroots, which means just as the Cascadia Department of Bioregion is inviting Joe and the design school to come and talk, each local landscape is inviting us in to empower the work on a local level and weave the story of place into a broader bioregional coherence. So Regenerate Cascadia started as a collaboration between Brandon and myself during the 2023 Edge Prize, which was an initiative by Salmon Nation and the Turan Collective, designed to bring a community of edge walkers, weavers on the edge of different communities, but tied to the whole, to share open source Indigenous knowledge for a more resilient world. There were more than 140 edge walkers from around the Cascadia bioregion that met for 8 weeks to explore place-based bioregional regeneration, tell their stories, and practice working cooperatively to distribute funding to regenerative projects. In Victoria, we had already invited the design school to lead a bioregional activation here in October. Brandon and I had also both attended the Regenerative Communities Network with their global summit in November of 2022. We were inspired to do the same thing here, but rather than a virtual event disconnected from a particular landscape, we wanted to use the summit as a capstone event to help connect the learning at a bioregional scale. Much of the on-the-ground work needed for bioregional regeneration is being done in our communities, but too often the work is siloed and not connected. Using a series of locally organized events to catalyze and weave a broad conversation so that the nested relationships between watersheds, ecoregions, and the larger bioregion becomes clear. During the Edge Prize, we both recognized that mapping and empowering the work already happening was what was missing. We saw a huge opportunity through catalysts such as the Activation Tour and the Regenerative Communities Network Summit to help weave a network that might spark a bioregional movement whose time has come.
From amazing events like the Edge Prize, a design challenge emerged that we wanted to explore. How can we empower all of our work and connect it with the resources we need for the long-term regeneration of the Cascadia bioregion? Rather than answers, we wanted to bring people together to explore questions. How do we weave these lessons coherently across many different watersheds and territories to connect the work done on the ground? How do we imagine new forms of bioregional governance while honoring and celebrating our unique stories of place?
Yeah, so Regenerate Cascadia is being developed as a long-term vision and process that works with on-the-ground communities to design and implement new frameworks of governance, ecology, and economy for the regeneration and health of our bioregions. More than just a tour and summit, we want to focus just as much on what comes before and what comes after. How can we be mapping our work and using the incredible energy at these one-time summits to keep the work going afterwards for a long-term regeneration of our bioregion? The goal then of Regenerate Cascadia is to develop a participatory framework at a watershed, ecological, and bioregional scale, able to democratically steward a vision. And information commons that can be mapping our work, as well as defining clear metrics for success And then finally, the creation of a bioregional regeneration fund that can support this work as defined by the landscape leaders themselves as part of a planetary network of bioregions and bioregional movements. We also want to begin to break down the silos that are dividing our work, connect each other together doing similar work, and shift the model from competitive ecosystems to collaborative ones. How can our work be empowered if we all came together in the same place? More than just gathering together landscape leaders or having a series of conversations that highlight our work, we will also want to begin the conversation of governance, of not just resisting what is failing, but starting to discuss and build the frameworks that our planet and communities need. And to do that together through these networks of trust and led by the amazing people in the communities that are already doing this work. Do you want to put the next? Yeah.
So where do we start? For us, these conversations start with a bioregional activation tour happening in communities around Pacific Cascadia, specifically in the Salish Sea, Willamette Valley, and Olympic Coast, happening from September 28th to October 30th. We have invited the Design School for Regenerating Earth to join us as we visit 14 communities over the course of 32 days, offering space for local landscape teams to share their work, as well as offering presentations, workshops, strategic planning sessions, and community discussions around what each deems most important, and so that we can begin to connect these conversations into a broader bioregional framework.
So it's hoped that the various activities will offer opportunities to engage diverse audiences from schools and universities to policy leaders, environmental groups, and the general public. These activations will allow every place-based group to connect with new audiences and form long-term networks that are the interconnective tissue for the watersheds and places.
During the bioregional activation tour, we will be in each community physically for a very short time, and yet we want to build something that we can be growing towards. Why are we traveling? What are we activating? What are we building towards? To help answer these questions, we want the tour to roll into an online summit to serve as a capstone event for the bioregional tour. Learning from Ben Roberts in the 2022 Regenerative Communities Network Global Summit, we will be hosting an online summit in the same vein, only this time we want to connect it into the physical realities of place and connect it with the local land leaders within that space. It's our goal to bring the energy together from the activation tour to film and live stream where appropriate and document these lessons for broader audiences and participants of Regenerate Cascadia. Every participant and hosting team will be invited to debrief, share lessons, presentations, workshops, share their experiences, as well as joining broader themed conversations about what worked and what didn't.
So the vision for the activation tour was inspired in part by the catalyzing potential emerging from the success of two similar events hosted earlier this year by the Design School for Regenerating Earth. The first involving 14 cities around the Great Lakes, the second involving multiple communities throughout the whole Colorado River Basin. Inviting the Design School to join us for a month-long bioregional activation tour throughout Salmon Nation is exciting because of the potential to effectively share this vision through coherent storytelling. As many of you know, the Design School is an online community and platform that weaves landscape leaders together across watersheds. We, along with many others, are growing the Design School to build a planetary network of bioregions. And so we're excited to invite Joe Brewer, Penny Heipel, and Benji Ross here to join us on the tour. And it's exciting for the Design School too. Not only will this be their most ambitious schedule to date, it's the fact that this is Cascadia, probably one of the most active places on Earth when it comes to existing regeneration initiatives. They're able to support their work through the Design School, and so are each donating their time of charge. Free of charge in service to what the land needs. Using the primary organizing principle that the land organizes the people, the Regenerate Cascadia and Design School use the following organizing principles: an understanding of pro-social at the foundation of its governance, pro-social means that we are that regenerative work is happening on its own, and that we can authentically support each other as best we are able without competition or undercutting each other. It is an understanding that the bioregional scale is the appropriate scale for the work required to regenerate the Earth, while simultaneously organizing into a planetary network of learning exchanges between landscapes. And it's also that all life is interconnected and interdependent, and thus a thinking systems lens is required for this work.
One of the most important aspects of Regenerate Cascadia is that the work we're doing is directly applicable to work happening around the world right now. Through the design school and other networks, we are working with landscape leadership teams in the Colorado River Basin and Great Lakes who will be hosting similar activation tours and summits in 2024, and now with others as far away as Central America, India, and Lebanon, who may do the same. Because of this, everything we are doing, from how we organize to how we structure the website, is being made available as templates, and we are working as hard as we can to make this work replicable and scalable across landscapes. Now, more than ever, our work can have an impact in bioregions around the world.
So how do we design a digital ecosystem capable of weaving the emergence of diverse groups so that they maintain their agency, whilst at the same time ensuring transparency and accountability with group decision-making? How do we support an information commons so that the learning isn't lost when people and organizations change over time? How do we maintain this information so that it is part of a dynamic, ever-changing learning process? How might we hold all of this without becoming bottlenecks to the process? So this was the design challenge.
And just to be specific, we are creating a Kumu map and front-end directory that help visualize our pathways. When people sign up on the website, their information as an organizer, as well as organizations that they're working with, are being collected and mapped as part of a directory, which can help visualize different connections, different organizers, and regenerative work happening in different communities. By doing this, we can see who is at the table and what voices are missing from the table. In addition, we can help grow our movement at the speed of trust. As we begin to have conversations around shared governance, allocating funding, creating design labs, we can already know who is present for these conversations. This is to help visualize who our organizers are and what connections they have, so we can also remove ourselves as bottlenecks. The things that we will currently be mapping are organizers, places, organizations, as well as starting to map report backs and evaluations from the tour itself.
So where does the money come from? So all of the work thus far, from those at the design school to Regenerate Cascadia team and almost everyone else in between, has been donated freely and in service to the regeneration of Earth. So that doesn't mean that there aren't real costs, including the living costs of all of those donating their time. At a minimum, our goal is to raise $20,000 by the time of the summit in November. Luckily, we've already received roughly $5,000 from the Salmon Nation and Terran Collective Edge Prize and $2,000 from the design school, which has gone a long way to covering some of the basic costs. This includes airline tickets, getting the bus ready, fuel costs and insurance, and then for local teams, putting in deposits and costs of venues, and then providing housing and food costs for 8 to 12 people over the course of an entire month. We'll also be live streaming and recording everything, as well as providing documentation for the whole event itself. After the activation tour, our biggest cost will be the Zoom fees for our online summit, which will be around $5,000. We're working with our local activation teams to try and fundraise for each event, but also want to make sure this remains in the spirit of a gift economy and that no one will not have access regardless of background or income. If you're able to donate, that's going to be part of part of what we're doing. And if you have ideas on how to provide a large sponsorship or know of great local organizations that can help provide food or housing in these locations, some of you are based in Cascadia, any pointers would be great. So most importantly, we just want to make sure that local organizing teams have what they need and will be stepping in where necessary to cover the costs. All of our budgeting will be tracked in an open budget process and be provided publicly on the website. Yeah, so some of the other nuts and bolts is that this is a grassroots program, and all support is coming from donors and grants that we have received through the, and all of those funds are being processed through the Department of Bioregion. Our long-term goal is to get this set up as a funded program that can have paid staff and facilitate the creation of a vision, information commons, an information commons and bioregional regeneration fund, managed by a democratic framework of local organizers, frontline communities, in ways that empower their work as defined by the groups themselves. So the discussion of data collection, evaluations, and learning processes has been really important. The evaluations of the processes, as well as improving how we learn together, is a big part of how the team of Regenerate Cascadia are developing the process. We are engaging with local land leaders, as well as some of the scaffolding teams to think through the actual processes for collecting the data so that learning becomes an integral part of how we proceed. We'll also be gathering stories, lessons, and learnings through a written proceedings document, which will be shared with all participants. We'll also plan to live stream as well as video interviews as we travel, and there's actually discussion about some serious documentary making along the way. So that's it. There's lots of stuff in the works there. We would like to be working with all of the landscape hubs to develop how and what we will be evaluating. This body of information will become a valuable part of how we tell our collective story, how we invite in support, and how we learn together and organize ourselves.
So what's next? Our hope is that through this activation tour and summit, we can begin a multi-generational process for the long-term regeneration of the Cascadia bioregion. In addition, we hope that we can be doing this process as part of a planetary community who can be trying similar things in their own communities, and that together we can be learning, trying, failing, and succeeding. If nothing else came from this, we simply hope that the regenerative work happening in the Cascadia bioregion will be stronger than before. And to end, I'd just like to share a poem by Sam Hamill, founder of Copper Canyon Press in Port Townsend, entitled "Of Cascadia." Of Cascadia, I came here nearly 40 years ago, broke and half broken, having chosen the mud, the dirt road, alder pollen, and 100 avenues of gray across the sky to be my teachers and my muses. I chose a temple made of words and made a vow. Let the ferns and the moss remember all that I have loved or lost, for I carry no regrets, no ambition to live it all again. I can't make it better than it's been or will be again. As the seasons turn and an old man's heart turns nostalgic as he sips his wine alone, I have lived in Cascadia, nor no paradise nor any hell, but both at once and made, as Elitas said, of the same material. A poor poet, I studied war and love, but Cascadia is what I'm of. So yeah, thank you all for your time, and I think that concludes our presentation. So
yeah. So welcome everyone, and thank you for being here. And I think at this point I'm just going to really open it up to conversation, what's coming up for you if you've got questions. Really wanting to make this a session that is much more, you know, how bioregional catalysts do their sessions on learning. So Mehdi.
Well,
Hi, everybody. How wonderful to have this appearing in the bioregional catalyst phase, because we really owe our ancestors. And I'm so delighted that Benji Ross is going to be a part of the Regenerate Cascadia tour, because really Benji is our ancestor in so many regards, not least in terms of the campfire process. And I just have to share something with everybody that I've just said to Brandon. I know that Regenerate Cascadia is what the planet needs at this time. I know it is supported by something that is much bigger than any of us or any group of Zoom people or any group that will be together at any point along the tour. And one of the signals that I know it has just come, because last night I planned to open the campfire that Clare and Brandon have been kind enough to let me co-host with a poem. I actually ended it with a poem by an amazing Cascadia poet called Tess Gallagher, but I had intended to open it with a poem by Sam Hamill called Of Cascadia. And I promise you that Brandon and I have not been talking together about that poem. That's why I know there is magic afoot. God is alive, and Regenerate Cascadia is going to be an extraordinary experience. Thank you.
Jonathan.
am I muted? No, I'm not muted. Hi. I just want to say that I'm filled with a joyful sorrow, kind of like one would have at a wedding or a graduation or something, where there's this sweet, tearful upswelling in me of the birthing of something beautiful. And it's wonderful to see how eloquent the two of you are in describing such vision, and really heartening. I'm feeling really, really encouraged. I'm very excited that hopefully those of us who are representing Southern Cascadia can come up into Oregon, or possibly all the way to Port Townsend, who knows, or the Olympic Peninsula. We're in a very interesting location because there's a lot of international attention. Our watershed, the Klamath, which compromises about 10 million acres, is getting a huge infusion of funding for ecological practices. But within that, we're needing to do a lot of social reformation, because there's such a fracturing of the vast diversity of people that live in that region. And it's being led, I believe, in much part by the indigenous community, the Karuk in particular, and bringing folks together. And I think that that's in service of the vast diversity of biological beings that live in the area. And so we're kind of situated between the Rogue and the Trinity rivers, which are also very important salmon habitat. But the massive dam removal, largest the world has ever known, is happening in our region. And so I think we really have to find a way to have a hub, a strong hub in our area for this movement. And so I'm very on board with trying to find ways to participate in that. And I'm here with Ilex, and she and I are in the process of trying to form a relatively small intentional community that's situated below Hotlam, so that we'll have some more secure housing to continue to work on this. So I'm super excited to be here, and I'm just incredibly impressed with the work that you've all done.
Thank you, Jonathan. It's really lovely to hear your reflections. And yeah, I mean, you're just speaking to people are doing such important work. And the important thing is that they not only are that we see each other, but that there is a way of actually connecting what's happening, so that on the ground, one of the things that's come up in feedback is that, and I know this, is people are so busy doing the work, it's really hard to get involved in a ton of different meetings and organizing and what have you. But when you're starting to organize people in their places, but then have it connected into these larger nested scales of sense making, it feels really powerful, and people can really focus on what they need to be doing. So you're doing the work, and then so I thank you. Jan.
Yeah, I just really wanted to appreciate both of you for just the huge amount of service you've given to Cascadia, but to this huge movement in the detail, the conscientious, dedicated, and experienced detail that you've put into the scaffolding, the understanding of what it needs to support engagement, because we can so easily have the ideologies and the knowing what we should do and what's wrong with how it has been, and then all dogpile into this mess, and then not be able to actually support the interactions that will actually hold the shift that we're trying to do in the world. So there's been, I just read into hearing, and yes, you're so articulate. I mean, I saw your first orientation video, and you really got it rolling here. So it's just great, and just knowing the amount of work that takes, like the behind the scenes work. But again, just coming around to the just hearing the words in there about understanding the systems that are working, and what people are needing in terms of integrity and yet freedom to be creative. I just I'm feeling that in there so much, and just appreciating. Yeah, like this does not come about without a huge amount of work, and it's way before this is happening, and then the holding the container during, and then the long term. So you're holding this large vision. I just want to appreciate you so much for that.
Thank you. And it's funny too. I think it's definitely emerging all the time. And I think it's really fun if you've been watching this process for a long time. I think you get to see how it's emerging, and it's really fun to see what it's growing into. And I think that a lot of that is because this idea of scaffolding really is this temporary outer structure that can really let things grow from within. And so there's just so much growing within as we connect with people who are on the ground doing the work. And then I've just really appreciated the how Clare has approached a lot of this in terms of the subsidiarity, and really centering that everything that we're doing is really in service of the land and landscape leaders. So that's been really, I think it's such an important connection. So.
Yeah, and I would love to just speak to something else as well, because it's all very well to come together on a vision that just feels really right and coherent. There's a whole other piece to working together with someone, because as you start to work, there's it's messy, and there's stuff coming at you, and oh my God, it's coming at us really fast. And so developing a trust relationship and being able to kind of work through really tricky things. And I mean, even this presentation, Brandon and I are often to the very last second changing and sort of trying to roll with things. And so there's a certain amount of of that trust, but I think it actually goes to the heart of all of what this work's about, because working with communities, working with people, it is messy, and we don't know the way forward. And so hearing your reflections on the vision that we're putting forward, because really there's a very core vision, and then everything else builds out from that. But to hear your resonance with that is it's just really wonderful to hear, because we do need to know that what we're bringing forward resonates, because for so long, I mean, I look back at my notes from 25, 30 years ago, they're not that different from the message we're bringing forward. It's just that it's starting to land, and there are more people that are hearing it. And so to hear the affirmation, kind of, it's really helpful. So thank you, Pam.
Well, bravo, both of you. Stunning. And such a useful piece of work. I can hardly wait to get the video, because I think it's going to be something that is really volatile to spread in the community. And I really have a sense of liftoff from this, that something is definitely being launched. And it's going across bioregions. We have here all of Cascadia, over there to Jan, down to Idaho and Gale. I like the way it's extending all the way down the Pacific Ocean to the Osa Peninsula. David, I'm not exactly sure where in California you're located, but you too are part of the sweep down south. And it's such a, and Gertie introduced me to the Bowker north of a region that I hadn't gone into. I'm so grateful for and it's stretching across digital platforms as well. And I think that what is being challenged for and challenging for all of us is something which is really so pregnant in all of these things of our moment, of the dying of modernity, of the moving into something else, with one foot in both worlds, but not really steady in any simple world. So there's so much that is going on that truly is messy. And I think that this just really helps to lay another sort of solid piece to step on, to see the reality of what it is we are doing. Like, it is not an abstraction. It's not just data. It is something that we are actually invited to engage in with each other on the ground, and through whatever mediums are available for us to communicate with each other in and spread the word around. Thank you, guys.
Yeah, thank you. Tricia.
Yeah, thank you both so much. And thank you, Regenerate Cascadia. It's so beautiful for me right now to, yeah, just to witness you, Claire, as well. Like, I just really want to just share how impressed I am, how proud I am of you. I mean, you've always been impressive over the time that we've been able to work together in bioregional catalysts, but like, for you to take what you've brought and build on it and refine it and bring it out into this beautiful collaboration is just yeah, I'm honored to bear witness to it. And I'm also really excited because as you were just mentioning, Pamela, you know, it filters through, and like here on the OSA, we're planning to have an assembly in January. It very much, you know, along this vein where it's like, how do we bring all the players together? And when we're talking about subsidiariness and nested systems, to really recognize that all of us in bioregions are really saying the same thing. We have very specific needs and we have very specific issues. And at the same time, we're all kind of like, we need to work together. We need more resources. We need more power on the local level. And so to be able to like really embrace our uniqueness and at the same time come together in our unity is just, it's just a mimicking of nature, isn't it? And I really also just want to thank you, Claire, for for the way that you're bringing this. And Brandon too, I don't know you, so, but you're fantastic too, but just recognizing in Clare the way that you've wanted to ensure that those of us who've been in bioregional catalysts and earth regenerators are able to benefit from this knowledge and this information is just priceless. Thank you so much. I also just wanted to ask, because in the Edge Prize, Terran Collective is one of the spaces that helped to fuel this. And I know that a couple of years ago, Terran Collective also did a bioregional conference there in the Bay Area. And so I'm curious if there's learnings from that experience, or if there's things that you're kind of either building on or learning from that experience. If you could go into that just a little bit, it'd be really helpful. Thank you.
Oh, wow. Trisha, there's so much there. And I think, thanks for even asking that question. And I think, so I'll get to that in a second. And what I wanted to say first was just, yeah, I think really it is important. It was important to me to really acknowledge the role that Earth Regenerators and the bioregional catalysts and all of you here, I mean, especially have played in my own growth in terms of understanding the working through some of these pieces and learning the language and the scaffolding to be able to take it to that next level. We knew what was needed, we just didn't know how to get there. And so that together the safety of being able to kind of muddle through together and then I could, 6 months would go by and you could see how much progress we'd made. So just really honoring that. This was a really special place. And I just, when we did the mapping of the Osa Peninsula and story of place, and then you took it off and you started doing your thing, there was this, we've held each other. So I really see all of you as part of the building to this place. So just really wanting to say that. And then the question about and I'd love Brandon to actually chime in here too. So the Edge Prize, I think it's fair to say that something like the Edge Prize is like this, it's like a container, but actually it's got these really other tentacles and how it came about and what have you. So it was a really useful learning process. I think they would tell you themselves that there are all kinds of things that they learned through it that they wouldn't repeat, and there are other things that they would actually develop out more. So I think that those conversations are actually happening right now. And so as a container, it really needs to go forward, but with all kinds of shifts. And a lot of relationships were developed during that. I mean, including the one with Brandon, but other relationships, Kiela's here. I mean, it's after a while, it's too messy to even try and point out who the relationships and where they came from. But more substantially than that, there is sort of really deep thinking that is Brandon and I continuing to talk to some of the people that were part of the designers of that, and the relationships that came out of that. So I think there is like this evolution that's continuing. At this point, this has unleashed conversations and discussions in absolutely every direction. And so it's way beyond. And so that was the importance of the digital network and finding tools that can help carry and take those conversations further. Brandon and I are only two people, which is why the scaffolding team has become really important, and it always was. And the next thing is like, how do we help to hold the next stages? Oh my gosh, David. David's just had a baby. David and Mary, yeah. Brandon, I don't know if you want to chime in on anything there with the Edge Prize or anything else.
Yeah, it was interesting. I hadn't had a lot of direct contact with the Terran Collective, other than I think I had been on their website and a couple other things. And then I'm also fairly connected, in terms of Judy Goldhaft and Planet Drum in San Francisco. And so I think I actually had heard about Terran Collective from them. And but then what was really auspicious was just that so Clare Politano and Aaron Brodeur actually moved up near Bellingham recently. And so the Edge Prize was just I think I got connected to the Edge Prize through Salmon Nation, and through this Cascadia Spoke newsletter that we do. And so it was just a really, really cool connection. And then to be able to connect that all together. And then they actually stayed involved with Regenerate Cascadia. I think Aaron actually just designed a new logo for us and all that. And so it's just been really, really wonderful to build those connections, and then to also see how excited they were about Regenerate Cascadia as well. So yeah, that was really fun. And then also being able to connect with Edward West, who I think is still in the Bay Area, and other people, was really nice.
RJ,
Yes, just to say first, I'm really humbled by what I've seen this morning, afternoon, wherever you are, and just a beautiful presentation of an amazing process, which just having a sense of this is a microcosm of what we're looking at right now, of all the work that's been going on for years. And I have such a strong sense here near the Appalachians, what I guess I can call Appalachian Edge, northeastern Pennsylvania, the greater Delaware River Basin, as to how this is all connected. We're each unique, but everything that was said this morning in the presentation, I can relate to and utilize it, and our people who can relate to and utilize it because it connects so well. I've spent so much time, as most of us have, in the top-down world, and I know the advantages of that, and I certainly see how well that's marketed. But this is what's really going on. The subsidiarity that you mentioned is where we're all at, and what keeps things turning. And we're right on the cusp, I think, of that really coming into full force with bioregions. Earth regenerators and bioregional catalysts have been coming to now for quite a while. It's interesting how the months just kind of slip by, but I can see the recurring process over and over again, and what we call weaving is going on all the time. And I've watched the Great Lakes region, some amazing things coming out of that. And of course, we know what's intended for, not just in the U.S., I mean, just all over, including the Colorado River Basin. So I just wanted to thank you all for putting in that time, and really thank everybody here. Some of whom I know for quite a while, and you're so much more articulate than I can be about this. But again, just thank you very much. I'm really, really energized by this, and it is an ongoing process, go on for a long time, and it's an exciting point. So I'll be quiet.
Gertie, so lovely to see you here. Thank you, RJ.
Thank you, Claire. It's so good to be here. It's been a long time, and I was glad for the invitation again. I'm in here in the same city that Claire lives in Victoria area. And I just, I don't know Brandon, but I know Claire. We've been in many, many projects together for several years over this time. And this has been a passion of Claire's for years. And it's so good to see how it's coming to fruition in many ways. And she has been extremely busy gathering people in this area to come together for when Joe was here. And it's just the work that she's doing is amazing, like One Planet. And now I'm part of a group called Greater Victoria Acting Together. And we're starting to talk about engaging in that as well. And just recently, Joe Brewer spoke at Global Kingship, Exploring the Emerging Noosphere. And this is just yesterday, actually. And there were some people from GVAC, Greater Victoria Acting Together, that were there. So I thought, wow, yeah. So people are hearing this in the local area. And so I just think it's so exciting. It's like the time has come. And this, what you're doing now, there's many others that are kind of similar and working together. And, Greater Victoria Acting Together, I've been part of a food and agriculture group. and we're working with Indigenous peoples. And so I hope that they too will be part of the Indigenous communities of this area, will also be engaged in this, because they'll be such an important voice. And there's a process going on in terms of re-looking at all our treaties that were never really officially endorsed or signed. And one of them is called Indigenous Protected Conservation Areas. And it's a land back process that's happening. And there's many things going on in this area on the Vancouver Island in terms of that. And I'm sure that those that are involved in that land back would be very interested in what's going on here, and such a support to this very important work. So thanks, Claire, and thanks for the great presentation today. Good to be here again.
Yeah, Gertie, thank you so much. And actually, Gertie is one of those people that, you know, I think that Victoria, because we've been trying to have, like, do something like this, that just has got kind of really catalyzed an extra level with the activation tour. What you're speaking to, those relationships and the work that's been going on, is so deep and like brilliant. But to also have all of the other pieces tied into it, just, it's kind of, to me, it's like there's lots of stuff that has been so ripe and ready. And this is one of what you're speaking to, is it kind of needs the bandwidth of exposure and sort of, and also the story of coherence added into it, because it's a coherent story. Just the story of coherence needs to really be what others are talking about to give it the fuel it needs. So thanks, Gertie, and thanks for everything you do. Gertie runs a group called, or an organization called Earth Literacies, and has been, anyway, you're involved in lots of stuff, but that's an amazing place for these conversations too. So. You know, I guess we're almost at the hour, so I wonder if, how do people feel about, how would you like to end off the session? Jonathan, you've got your hand up.
Yeah, I'm just wondering about logistics and how we're starting to communicate about those of us who want to come and participate, but obviously can't go on the whole month tour. I'm just wondering, about the logistics, if we could, maybe take a 2 or 3 minutes to talk about how to plug in, how to kind of follow the schedule, places to stay, things like that. How do we learn about that?
I think so. That's a really good question. I would say that probably the way to do that is that right now we're still, we have pretty much really active and solid kind of organizing groups in each area, which is really nice. They are still all working out their schedules. Actually, I think Keala is a great example of, I think the Columbia River, Portland, and Eugene are probably the furthest along, which is also really nice since they're the first legs of the tour. And in terms of details, so we'll have probably about 8 to 10 people in a bus and a small van that will be traveling around into the communities. And then we're hoping, basically, we're working with the local teams to help organize the actual schedule of events, the housing situation, and the food. And so that's going to be different for each area. But we do really want to, where possible, provide space for people to join us in each area to come and camp, or maybe it'll, maybe there's rooms, or, they can, people can arrange their own housing. But I think what will be nice is, I think we'll have a fairly good schedule locked in with the dates, times, what's happening where, and then in each area, I think once we have the housing better figured out, we can also make sure that there is space for other people who would like to join, and whether it's for part of the tour or other stops or this or that. So that's kind of my thought. Claire,
Yeah, I was going to say, I mean, one of the other things that we're going to be doing, so there's definitely the physical part of it, but I think it's also sort of being respectful of the local communities. Not everybody can handle, a major influx. So I think there's that to think about. So, but we are going to be live streaming some of the events, as many of them as we can. We've actually got somebody who's Stephen Mars, some of you know. He's going to be the kind of key person. He may not be doing all of it, but live streaming where we can. So there's almost everything we're going to try, and we've tried to make the Regenerate Cascadia is kind of, if you think about it as the front door, that's kind of where you get access to kind of knowing what's going on. And we're going to try and be really up to date with communicating on that site. So the live streaming you'd be able to find there. The other thing is social media. We'll be trying to really get that fanned out. There is so we're starting to get some of these pieces in place. Is probably some kind of a newsletter or something that would go out as a blog or an updates of what's going on, and then there's a lot of stuff that cannot fit into the activation tour, but we're channeling it towards the summit so that those conversations can kind of, like, really what we're trying to do is we're trying to create the conditions that whatever seeds are being planted, that they not only have a chance to grow well, that they actually have the support to take them to the next place. So that's kind of the thinking. And the summit is a good place. There's so many incredible conversations happening in silos that need to be brought together. And that's really started to come out of the woodwork as we've kind of been doing. I mean, Brad and I are at the front lines of all these conversations, oh my God, you need to speak to, and they didn't know about each other. So we need a way to kind of channel those so that they can kind of do their own thing with some of the support that's needed, because really we're talking about creating brand new systems for a lot of things. And so in order for them to not just sort of come up with a great big a lot of excitement and then fizzle, they do need those paths, that scaffolding. So Tricia.
Just
say something for a second. I know we're at the time, so if people have to go, please feel free, but it's really good to be able to hear. So Tricia.
Well, that's what I was actually going to ask before I imposed my question, because I've got lots of questions, but is it an hour-long meeting? Because if so, I'll just cede my questions until another time.
Sorry, I realize we've got half an hour left.
Yeah, I mean, we technically said an hour and a half, so I actually think we have plenty of time. And I'll just jump in real quick, just to answer the summit question real quick, and then we can move over. But yeah, I think the summit is a really great place to plug in, and that's a great open invitation for people in the anyone in the bioregion who wants to share lessons of what they're doing. But it could also be a great place for Earth Regenerators to give a presentation to help plug people into the work that you're doing, talk about the work that you've been doing for many years. So that's just another idea. But yeah, sorry, on over.
So yeah, I have a curiosity about about the activation tour, and is the format, I assume the format is different depending on what the community is developing, but I'm also wondering if there's some kind of general structure that people are going off of and then developing their own kind of unique flavor for each of it. I'm just curious about that. Is there is it a day-long thing for each place, or are there different activities, or is it presentation? Just kind of the nuts and bolts of that. And maybe you don't have the answer, but that's a curiosity of mine. Thank you.
Yeah, I think so. In each different community, it will certainly be different and tailored. And there's a lot of work meeting and talking with each different activation team about what's most helpful for them and what they would like to see. And then within that, there's kind of I don't know, we're calling it a menu of options. and they're welcome to also host whatever discussions and presentations. And then, you know, and then Joe kind of has like a presentation he can give, and then there's other ideas of community workshops and other things. But in some places, you know, it's 2 days, and other places it's 3 days, 4 days. So there's a wide variety of different things that people are doing. And in like, I think, you know, common threads tend to be things like potlucks, gathering groups together for like, you know, strategic sessions. Field trips is also something that we're incorporating, of like visits to places that might have lessons that we can be sharing. And then also we do want to make sure that we're including a few different central themes to each place that we visit. So we'll have a certain type of like one session where we will be asking like the same questions at every different place, with the idea of creating a proceedings document and really starting to get at the heart of what do we need, what is the shared vision, to kind of start creating that broader bioregional framework and get people thinking on that level. And then we also hope to then bring everybody together for the summit. And that's really where these activations can start, these teams form. And then the goal is then to bring everybody together. They can share, debrief, but also meet all the other local organizers, and then really start to have conversations about what's next. So a big goal with the activation tour and summit is that, based on other events especially, we didn't want to just focus on the event. We're really working to scaffold how we get to the event, and then what comes after. So we really do want it, like the event itself should be the start, not the end, you know. And yeah.
I'm going to just add one. Thanks, Brandon. That's great. One other example, because this really sort of came clear to me for the Victoria activation, is that there are groups. So once we started to get into it, there are groups like the group that Pamela works with, which is the Barker Creek, I can't remember the actual name, Barker Creek Restoration Society or Barker Creek Society. Anyway, whatever. There are groups on the ground that have already been working cooperatively with a whole bunch of other related groups, with other watershed groups, but related groups. And then what Gertie's working with Greater Victoria Acting Together, it's a coalition of like people working together on specific issues. There's actually inviting them to take on one of the portions of a day, or even a whole day, to go and actually self-organize. Like, how can the activation tour be in service to the work you're already doing, and then really work with them to maximize that potential? Because, you know, it's like, and when you start to see that, it's like, oh, the possibility of being able to do something can really kind of catalyze way more even. So Pam.
Yes, I'm just putting in the chat a link to a space that has been, I mentioned it also in the chat further up above, that is being dormant, but I think it's time to reinvigorate it, where people can talk to people in Earth Regenerators, and it's free to join ER, so anybody can pop on and see what's on offer. And this is one of them, which is places that people are offering to other people to stay in when you're visiting. And it seems like with the bioregional activation of Cascadia, what a perfect time it is to bring that more to people's attention, because what a wonderful way for Earth Regenerators to, lowercase, to meet other Earth Regenerators than to extend that hospitality. And also, Gertie, I had no idea that you were so involved with First Nations stuff, and I really want to weave you in with the Reconciliation folks who are working in, I don't know if you know Bruce Kirkpatrick, but if not, then we need to connect so that there are fewer redundancies in this conversation on how to move ahead in that. So good to hear about this.
We'll connect, Pam.
Oh, I love the weaving. That's wonderful. I also was wondering, that's a wonderful idea, Pam. I wasn't actually aware of that space, but what would be amazing is if there was a way of I don't know, a short little video explaining how the space works, something that is like really easy and tangible for us so that we can understand better, so that we could make that available as a tool.
Okay, you mean for a
Welcome
Cascadia?
space.
Okay, for
For the
Cascadia.
ER welcome space, that space that you just shared with us in Earth Regenerators.
Okay, but are you asking to have a little something that the Cascadia bioregion thingy can refer to as a resource for people to go to?
Yeah, if we can understand as a resource, I think what I would suggest is that we put that into the Telegram group as a general offering. And I think that's where, you know, I don't, people will pick up on it, and then it would be great it'll have a life of its own if it's got, you know, if people are really resonating with it. And then the better we can communicate what it is that's being offered, the easier it is to present it. I don't know what your thoughts are, if you've got anything to add to that, Brandon, but otherwise, Mitty.
I would just add that I think one thing that's nice about this process is there are a lot of people bringing different offers, lots of different tools and platforms and digital things. And so one of our big goals is to just start to weave all those together in the same conversation, so that we can really help bring coherence and support where it is. And I don't think, you know, the goal of the Regenerate Cascadia Tour is not to jump to any one particular thing, but rather to bring people together and kind of see what emerges. So I'll just add that.
So maybe I'll just pick up. I'm still remembering Bayo Akomolafi's comment last weekend in a wonderful project called We Will Dance with Mountains, where he said maybe the spider, the web isn't the project of the spider. The web is what makes the web. So it must be the web that is calling me to say, to you, Jonathan and David, if you are able to work your lives so that you can bring the southern end of the story into the picture, one of the tasks that I'm going to be having is to liaise with the local organisers on housing needs for the core bus team. And if, when you've worked out from the map where you want to plug in, you would like to share with me what your dreams would be for how you might be supported on your journey. I can always have it in my hip pocket to name as a possible request when I'm talking with organisers specifically on housing needs. So that's an offer. That's another piece of the web that has required me to call it into being. And I love, I was thinking, I think it's just perfect that you named the Earth Regenerator space, Pamela. You know, Earth Regenerators, all we need to do is look at the membership list with names of places in mind and just put a request out on the main network. Is there anybody who might be able to offer housing? You know, that's just, it can happen as of now. So Jonathan, I would encourage you to do that as well. The more webs, the more pieces of the web, the more chance it is of happening.
Jonathan, did you have your hand? Thanks, Mitty. I think, yeah.
Yeah, I'm just thinking about how I really desire to support people. And I don't know how much I can personally participate, as I'm in a huge transition of closing out a space that I've held in the Bay Area for 25 years and needing to vacate. So you can probably see I got boxes behind me. But you know, Hotlam is always available for people to stop in transition. Ilex and I also have other possibilities, possibly for people if they're on their way from California going into Oregon. And it could be a really cool stopover. People could, you know, be in conversation with us in, you know, the Southern Cascadia region around Mount Shasta. But also I think it'd be really cool to support each other in traveling north. So maybe David and I could work on communicating what we're trying to do in California to support the summit. And I know David's got a tremendous amount of skills. And so, you know, if there's other people that you can imagine plugging in, I'll put my email address in the chat, and we'll try to kind of focus as the communication hub to get people connected from the southern regions to come up.
So one of the things I'd really love to say, just you've kind of sparked for me, is we're putting together a template media kit for all of the hubs to be able to communicate, sort of sending newsletter blurbs to their networks, and press releases out that they can customize to their landscape, to the local media. But really what it is, it's about storytelling and getting the word out. And I know Steve Welzer, you're here with your amazing, I can't remember the name of the magazine that you do, but it's on bioregionalism. And you ran, I think, this amazing article on Earth Regenerators and what we were trying to do. In fact, it would be so amazing to be able to connect the dots from Earth Regenerators, like following on from that article to you know, where we're to Regenerate Cascadia. But yeah, I think that right now the big thing is really telling the story, and telling the story in a coherent way. And I'm going to just bring in one other piece, is that greenwashing happens so quickly. Words get co-opted. The word regenerate's been co-opted. It's going to happen here. And so it's like getting out ahead of the sort of co-opting, and making sure that there are coherent stories. And really that whole a concept of subsidiarity, when there are loads of stories coming from the grassroots of the connections, like the power of that is a really compelling story. And we've also got the help of really incredible meme makers. Joe, you know, the Rules that he came from, and I can't remember the other group they were part of, but really looking at how do cultural stories, sort of how does that get transmitted, the cultural evolution piece. And they're really working on that too. So and it's just about making sure that the coherence of the story is what's landing and being carried. So in terms of supporting, I would say that the really important thing is having those stories basically be like seeds going out everywhere. The rest of the world needs to hear. They're doing this already. It just needs to wake up the other seeds elsewhere. So yeah, I would say that's probably one of the biggest ways of supporting, besides, you know, when we've got actual needs. But yeah. Steve.
Yeah, the magazine is called Green Horizon. It comes out twice a year. It's actually directed to the green politics movement audience, but green politics early on was very influenced by bioregionalism. So yeah, in the fall issue, which is being put together now and will be sent out in October, there's Benji's article about the Colorado River Basin, a report that he sent out, I think, in May, but I thought it was great. So we're going to run that, and we're going to run also a feature called What is Bioregionalism? There was a guy writing in the 90s who wrapped up all the early congresses, you know, the North American bioregional congresses that started in the 80s and went into the 90s. And he kind of when they were fading at the time, he wrapped up a lot of the reports, so that should be of interest. But my my other main activity is the Altair Eco Village project in Phoenixville, Pennsylvania, because the conception that I always have is that if we can create eco villages as part of our work, eco villages all over the place, that then will network and become the basis for the bioregional reorganization of the whole society. Meanwhile, we have a place to live, and these are our base camps. So I'm working hard on the one called Altair Eco Village in Phoenixville, Pennsylvania. Over.
Yeah, I'll just jump in on that too. Of one of our big hopes with the tour is also to connect in with many of the original old school organizers and bioregional organizers from the 80s and 90s and zeros. And so many people are still around, from David McCloskey to it's really nice here in Seattle. We have Lance Scott, who helped do all the proceedings for the early, 1986 Cascadia bioregional congresses. And we're connected with Peter Moulton in Olympia, who has all of these amazing archives of the early Green Party and the bioregional congresses that they helped host at Evergreen and around from 86 to 92. And so connecting, I think, helping connect this kind of modern idea of bioregionalism with the roots of bioregionalism and where it came from, and also the story that those people are still here, and that work's been going on for decades, and helping document interviews, connect, and share those stories is really, really important. And this year is also the 50th anniversary of the Planet Drum Foundation, and they're actually starting to do they're having a museum exhibit in San Francisco that they're putting together. And so we're also partnering with them to come give a presentation, but also to see if we can try and get those exhibits that they're putting together and bring them up here in 2024 as well. So it's a wonderful thread and a really important component that we'd also like to be weaving.
So, I think we've got just a few minutes left. I guess we were so efficient in the first part of the meeting. I've already been on a few meetings this morning. So anyway, I'm wondering about just doing a round of checkouts with everyone. We've only got 8 minutes, so just keeping it to maybe a minute or less would be good. But just some reflections would be good. And I can start and I'll pass it forward. It felt so good to just look and see who was here, and just the biggest thing I think is just, this is, somebody said this, I can't remember who it was, but this is so much bigger than any of us. It's bigger than any of the troubles that'll happen along the way. Like this is the North Star, and I think that's the thing that I like. Let's just keep our minds, our head, that's what we're moving towards, and I know we'll get there. Like I'm excited. This is very exciting. So Gertie, I'm going to pass to you.
Thanks, Claire. Yeah, this has been a great meeting. I'm really happy to be here and be connected again. So thank you everyone for your participation. I'll pass it to Steve.
Okay. Well, this is always encouraging. I'm involved with a lot of movement activities, but I think that the most fundamental and then the most long range important is the bioregional movement, because it's the vision. I think Claire said North Star or Lodestar, North Star is the truth. Of course, it's very, very alternative to the way the things are now. And so it's it's a very long range kind of a thing, but I think it's really the most important. So this is terrific, and I'll do all I can to support it.
And who do you want to pass on to?
Oh, I'm sorry, to Gurney.
She's been Maybe I'll pass it on to RJ.
Yeah, thanks, Claire. I'm glad you keep reminding us of the North Star, because the North Star is always there and we're always working toward it. And I will say, I'll be using this video locally, I know. So I really appreciate that this has been recorded. And thank you especially Claire and Brandon for doing this presentation today, and everybody else who's, it's just so great to see you all here, and we'll keep working. I'll pass it on to Jan.
Yes, it's so great to be amongst familiar faces from the last 3 years from Earth Regenerators, plus the familiarity of Gertie and Claire, who I've known for a long time, and the familiarity of these ideas, because I go back to working on this when Donnell and Meadows was putting the bioregional center concept out, and working with the Planet Drum stuff that was coming out and all that. And it's like, geez, it's taken so darn long, and hell, we're in this mess that we're in, and yet, wow, the excitement of feeling this take legs and have this deep sense of commitment and authenticity and form to it is just deeply touching to me. So thank you. And I'll pass it on to Trisha.
Sometimes when I get a little confused or I get a little dispirited, I think about the shoulders that I'm standing on, and then I get strengthened, I get picked up, and I get elevated. And I sit here and I look at all your faces, and I know just little tidbits of your backgrounds, but I'm on the shoulders of all of you that have carried this for so long. And I just thank you so much for giving me strength and for helping to give me direction. And it's just been such a lovely thing to come back into this space and to feel this ripple that's coming from Cascadia, and feeling it just kind of coming down here along the Pacific and reaching us here at the OSA. So thank you so much. And I'll pass it to Mitty.
Thank you. I'm at risk of bursting into tears. In 1975, I landed in Portland, Oregon, as a young military wife of a husband who received a dream posting to a secondment to the American Corps of Engineers. And we had 2.5 amazing years of learning about this incredible continent. We traveled, thanks to the incredible generosity of the Corps of Engineers. We were constantly traveling places and representing them. We didn't know how or why, but we were doing it. And we were in Montana, we were in Washington State, we were sent down to San Diego in California. We learned to really know and love deeply the Columbia River Gorge. The US Corps of Engineers is about to dismantle a dam in the Malibu Creek watershed where I now live. And there's something so curious to me about the same group of people that built the dams that actually have created so much chaos in the Columbia, are now going to be removing a dam in the Malibu Creek watershed to enable the steelhead to spawn again. There is magic afoot. There is no question in my mind. Trisha and I this morning were part of a group, and we're going to be creating an amazing partnership, which is the So actually, we're already in that partnership for a Regenerosa Vivero project as the next stage of Vivero going out into the bioregions. And I find myself using gifts that I honed in the 80s in a different kind of world. We're on the way, folks, and Regenerate Cascadia is going to be mega. And thank you, Brandon. Thank you, Claire, for finding each other. And thank you, all of the ancestors. You know, I wouldn't be here today without Joe Brewer. I wouldn't be in Bioregional Catalyst without Benji Ross. They're going to be on that tour at the invitation of Claire and Brandon. It's coming together, you know. We're seeing the network building. I've spoken quite enough. I'm going to be quiet and pass to Brandon.
And
Yeah, I think I've had much talking already. So yeah, no, it's just wonderful to be here. Really appreciate it. It's been a wonderful conversation. Thank you for everything is people have contributed. And I think we're at 11:30, so I'm gonna pass back over to Claire.
Yeah, haven't heard from Jonathan and Tian, and I just wondered if they'd like to have a checkout, anything.
I'll just say that I'm super appreciative and enthusiastic. Thank you all.
And
Hi,
Tian,
everyone. Can you hear me?
yeah.
Oh, good. It's so good to see you all. You can't see me though. I don't know why my video isn't working, but it's so good to see you all. And I've been away a long time, and look at this. I stepped in just in time for magic. I can't believe it. Mitty, you're so right. Oh my God. Oh, I miss you. And thank you so much for this beautiful work you're doing, and blessings to you all. And I am going to jump back in because I have been depressed and sad, and for the past year it's just been so rough, a lot of death and everything going on in my life, and this brings me back to life. And I just yesterday seeing this note about this meeting and going, oh my God, and I remembered who I was, and then the life has come back in me. I feel so much better. I feel like a human being again. Thank you. I love you.
Tian, what a beautiful, beautiful note to end on. Thank you. Thank you, everyone. Bye-bye. We'll see you along the road.
Thank you all.
Thank you. Hey, Brandon. You there? Oh.